Hello and welcome. We'll be talking about pseudocode and flowchart, but for this video especially we're talking about pseudocode, and then in our next video we'll talk about flowchart. Well, pseudocode is just a way of representing our code in pure English. So before we write our code, we need to represent our code in a more human-friendly uh, term, in a human-friendly way, just for us to get an overview of how our code is going to work. And apart from that, just for us to understand the logic behind our code, to really understand the logic behind our code, and it will help us to see the errors before even we start writing the code. If there is going to be an error, it is going to make our life easy and fast. So that is the whole secret behind writing pseudocode and flowchart and algorithms. So right here I have adding two numbers together from input of user. So want to add two, want to write a code that has two user input together. So the first thing we do is we write the word start with the word start, and then we declare a variable. So we declare a variable, we give the name of the variable input1, and we say input1 is equals to any value that the user inputs, and in this instance we just use n1 to represent any value that the user inputs. And then we declare a second variable, and we say the name of the variable is called input2. Now a variable is just a container that stores data. So we are creating we are creating a container called input1 to store the value n1 or whatever the user inputs, and we are taking another variable, we're creating another variable called input2, another container that is storing the value n2, whatever the user inputs as n2. And then we declare the variable, we create another variable, we declare another variable called total, and then we assign the value of input1, and this should be input1, not input space 1, input1. We are adding the value of input1, whatever the user inputs as n1, and then we are adding it with whatever the user inputs in n2. And then the fourth line, we say we display the total, display to the user what the total is. So basically, to see how this really works, we can change the value here to, let's say, 5, and then the value here we can change this to 6. So we declare the value input1. Now input1 is storing the value of 5, and then input2 is storing the value of 6. And then on the third line here, declare variable total, we have input1 plus input2. Now input1, 5 has been assigned to input1, so input1 has the value of 5, and input2 has the value of 6. And so we say input1 plus input2, which is 6, 5 plus 6, and then when we display the total, we are going to get 11. So simply, we've written a pseudocode that tells the computer or instructs the computer step by step on how to add two numbers. Now the computer does not know how to add two numbers, but we've written step by step instructions for the computer to write to add two numbers. Now we can take this pseudocode and can translate it to any programming language of our choice, and the computer using the programming language is going to understand how to take the steps of adding two numbers together. So basically that is what pseudocode is meant to do. Now I have another example here. In our next video we are going to create a flowchart of this example that we have here and the next example. So we have the second example, greater than. So the greater than, also we start with the word start, and then we declare the variable, we say input1 equals to 6, and then we declare the second variable, we say input2, we give it the value of 30. Now we could simply use n1, n2, but I'm going to go to n1, n2 now, so that we can basically understand that this could be any value. So any value. Input 1 is equals to any value n1. Input 2 is equals to any value, and we just use n2 to represent those, that is n1 for any value, n2 for any value. And then we declare a variable called greater than. I've said greater than should to have the value of 0 assigned to it. So we are assigning the value of 0 to greater than. And now we want to check which one is greater than between input 1 and input 2. So the way we do, we say if input 1, that is if the value of input 1 is greater than the value that is assigned to input 2. If the value is greater than the one applied to input 2, then do this. Now what is going to happen if that is true will be this indented line, this line that is inside. So if input 1 is greater than input 2, then assign the value, whatever value is in input 1, assign that value to greater than. Or we could just say, assign the value of input 1 to greater than. So if the value of input 1 is greater, it is going greater than is going to have that value. And then we say else if input 2 is now greater than input 1, if the value of input 2 is greater than input 1. So if the first one is false, if input 1 is not greater than input 2, it's going to check the second statement if that one is true. So else if input 2 is greater than input 1, then greater than is equals to input 2. So greater than has the value of input 2 because it is now greater than input 1. Then you're going to display greater than. So a very simple way of understanding it is, let's give this a natural value. So I give this 6 and I give this 3. So input 1 has a value of 6, input 2 has a value of 3. Now if you go down to this if statement, if input 1 is greater than input 2, now let's check what does input 1 has, what value is in input 1. Input 1 has a value of 6. Is 6 greater than the value of input 2, which is 3? Yes. So what is going to happen? Greater than is going to be equals to input 1. So it's not going to check this else if again because we found out that the if statement is true. So we jump from that to the display greater than and going to display that the value of input 1, which is 6, is going to display 6 to the user. And then what if we change the value of input 2 to 30? Now if you change the value of input 2 to 30, it's going to check if input 1 is greater than input 2. Now input 1 is no longer greater than input 2, so it's not going to assign greater than equals to input 1 because input 1 is not greater than it. So it's not going to run this block of code here. It's not going to run that. It's not even going to see it. So once it checks this is false, it's going to move to this to check if this is true. And you're going to check if input 2 is greater than input 1. Is input 2 greater than input 1? Input 2 is equals to 30. Input 1 is equals to 6. 30 is greater than 6, so it's going to assign the value of 30 to greater. So it's going to display 30 as the greatest of the two values. So we're going to display 30. So with this, we understand how pseudocode works. You understand how it works, and with this, most of the questions in our project, you can be able to solve them. So my name is Collins David. To give me the courage and the zeal of posting more videos for you, please subscribe. I can't re-emphasize that enough. Please subscribe, like, and share. Ensure that more of our students get this. So you can share in your body group, you can share in all the platforming on Slack. Ensure that you are not sharing to people outside this program. Ensure this video reaches people in this program because these videos are dedicated for people in the program with us. My name is Collins. You can search me on Slack, ask me any question. I'm going to get back to you.